Originals. Découvrez en avant-première nos interviews sur les séries qui font l'actu.
Bonjour, dans cet épisode d'Originals, on est avec Jeff Astrof, le co-créateur de Shining Vale, une comédie horrifique qui arrive sur Starz le 6 mars. So hello, Jeff.
Hi, wow, that was fantastic. I could listen to that all day.
It's such an honor to meet you. I'm a huge fan of Trial and Error, and I'm still heartbroken by this cancellation.
Not as heartbroken as I am. And I'll just tell you, since we do have a couple extra seconds, I have a text chat with my cast, Trial and Error cast, and every now and again someone will say something, and the whole thing lights up, and we're still like really, really close. Like Kristen chimes in, and Nick, and I still have them over, and it's heartbreaking for me. But it actually, I was shooting the finale of Trial and Error. I didn't realize it was the series finale when this project came on my lap. And I was like, they're like, we want you to develop something else. And of course, at the time I was like, Trial and Error is going to run forever. I was working on season 3. I know, I shouldn't have said it out loud. And they said that, we want you to develop something else. I said, I don't have another original idea. I was literally still writing the finale and filming it. And they said, well, this producer, Aaron Kaplan, has a project with Sharon Horgan you want to talk about. I was like, okay, that I'll sit for. And, and I found out she wanted to do, I told my studio, I said, I'm only doing things. Because after Trial and Error, I got to do something in the genre bending world. And I was like, I only want to do things in the genre bending world. And he said, well, I'm working on this project with Sharon Horgan. It's The Shining, but as a comedy. I was like, that is exactly what I want to do. So that's how this came about.
Well, you've anticipated my questions, obviously. So how was the first meeting with Sharon? How familiar were you with her work?
So I was a gigantic fan of Catastrophe. That's mostly what I knew her from. I'm not sure if Divorced came out yet, maybe, but I was a huge fan of Catastrophe and a huge fan of hers. I'd seen her in movies, and it was very, very fun to talk to her. I only learned through these interviews that she was on a beach in Greece on vacation, probably drunk when she was talking to me. So I no wonder it got along so well. But I was so excited because she said to me, the first thing she said was, look, I have this idea, but I want to do, she said, every time I've seen a horror that tries to be funny, it's either really scary and the comedy doesn't make you laugh, or not intentionally, or if it's really funny, the horror does not scare you. And like, I'm wondering if you can do do you think it's possible to do a show that's just as funny as it is scary? And I said, and I thought for like a second, I was like, yes, because whenever you're in a horror movie, after you scream, people laugh. And like, it's the same. And I never even thought of that. Like, I'm always looking for different ways to make people laugh. Like, honestly, like Sharon and I always, it's better coming out of her mouth when she says we're a horror for comedy, but I will quote her. So I was like, this is a really new way to tell jokes and to surprise people. And I said, let me think of it for a second. And I got off the phone with her and I wrote the final scene with the deer. I don't know how much of the show you've seen. I assume
5 episodes.
Oh, 5 episodes. It's so fun that people are watching the first 5 episodes. But the penultimate scene in the pilot with the deer, I wrote that not knowing anything about the show. And I said, this is how you do horror and comedy together. And she's like, let's do it. So then I had to write to that. But like, I was just like, it just clicked in my brain as a new way to, tell the story. And it's been, Sharon made me, and I always say this, she's made me like a better writer, because I've only done comedy before. And like she does a very sophisticated kind of comedy. Whereas I oftentimes, like, I'll turn in a draft to her and she'll be like, really going to do that sitcom joke, which is the worst thing she could say. That's right. This is my joke when somebody, like, when I'm in a room on Zoom and somebody like makes me feel bad, like I just really lower myself.
That's actually funny. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's what I do. And then I'll and
comedy. Yeah.
Right. And then she'll say, is that a callback? I'm like, Sharon, my house is built on callbacks. And so like, she really challenged me. And there was I remember writing her a letter after one of her notes with me, and I had the letter hand delivered to her because I said, by the time you get this letter, I won't hate you anymore because you make me a better writer. And she challenged me in such incredible ways to not go for anything easy and just to make it character-y and, make the characters, it all comes from a place of character. So, yeah, we hit it off immediately and continued to this day. So it's great. She's a great partner.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So you wrote the whole series, the 8 episodes yourself?
So I did not. I wrote Sharon actually in a large part because of when she had this idea like a couple of years ago, and I was enthusiastic about it. And she's like a mega producer doing a million things. So she's like, well, this will be your thing. And of course she helped out a lot, and always gave great notes and was involved in casting, and and always gave me notes on everything. And then I was given to write it just because it came about really piecemeal. It's so funny because I always said, like, historically, I've been doing this for 30 years. It's like there's some shows that come together and it's like easy the whole way, and you can tell. And this show looks like that, the way it came together, but it really was like a 2.5-year process because COVID had a lot to do with it also, and we developed at Showtime first. And Showtime thought Sharon was going to do it and then star in it, but I never wrote it for Sharon. I wrote it for Pat Phelps, whoever that was going to be. So then Starz wanted it. We're like, well, we want to go with the people who love us. And then Starz was great. And then there was the whole casting and then COVID. So it took a long time. So they gave me 2 writers, one horror writer. I hired only women writers. One was a horror writer and one was a comedy writer. And the horror writer on the first day said, wow, this is my first comedy. And the comedy writer said, this is my first drama. I was like, all right, well, here we are. But yes, I did a lot of the writing myself, but my writers, especially my number 2, my horror writer, Jill Bloatvogel, had only done horror, and she really taught me the rules of horror. And there were very, very, very distinct rules in horror and setting up scares and stuff that I had no idea about that really, really helped me.
If we put aside the pressure to make the audience laugh, what's the most important characteristic for you, in your opinion, for writing a good comedy?
I think just that you know what the characters want and that their stakes are high. And that's why I love doing it. In Trial and Error, I was like, I pitched Trial and Error for 3 years and nobody was interested because they're like, it's about, especially the first season, it's about a guy who's accused of killing his wife, and they're like, no, it's a drama. And I was like, no, that, like, just think of the stakes of it, like that someone's accused, like he may die. And this was even more so because this was like mental illness, and this was like puts a woman's soul, like her actual soul. And I was just like, so I think like making jokes is easy. It's it's what I do, oftentimes getting me in trouble in personal life. But for me, it's just like, it's having the drama. It's having like the dramatic structure of it and having it be about something. And this is about so much and being like hanging so much on mental illness and women's health. And it's so much fun. I hate to say it's so much fun writing about those things, but it really is. It's really, it's great. And given the cast is just, it can really challenge me to challenge them.
So you mentioned new challenges writing horror, but what were exactly these challenges that never occurred to you before because you've never written horror before?
So my first draft of this show, writing horror, was just like, it's kind of like when somebody attempts to write a script and they're like, oh, I'm sure this is what it looks like. It's like every time like Pat went into a room, there was blood everywhere. And there was like, she was seeing flashes of things. And horror has to play, if there's too much, there's none. You know what I mean? Like if there's too many scares, then there are no scares. And you can see this in movies that try to constantly scare you and you become numb to it. It's the same thing like in a comedy, that if a movie is like joke after joke after joke, the pressure on the jokes has to get higher and higher, or you're not going to laugh. If you can't, there's very few movies where you're laughing wire to wire. So with the horror, it was pacing it out. There are also like rules to horror. Like my, number 2 told me, Jill, like in horror, you write to surprise your most sophisticated member of your audience. In comedy, oftentimes you go for the low hanging fruit. So, you really have to kind of lead them down a certain direction and go the other way, which should be comedy. That's where the overlap is. It's surprising the audience. But also horror builds in a very, very slow way, and there's a very, very slow creep, and it's it's a long play to set up something. But I loved that. And then there was the whole thing with, I was constantly being told, well, a demon wouldn't say that. I was like, well, what if I write it there? They have to. It's a great joke. And you're like, you're not going to be. And so learning the difference between a ghost and a demon, and like having my character have to learn that too. So I like writing, you know, when I did Trial and Error, again, not to harp on that show, but like there are certain, everything in that show came from something real and came from like the real, something that happened in the law. Like everything that we do in our show obeys a law of horror, especially when Pat is the only one who can see Rosemary. And it's like, there's certain laws that we have to obey. And also knowing that one of the big challenges of the show is that you have to be able to watch this show that, oh, this was all in Pat's head, or, oh, this is really
it's happening. Yes. That was my question all along. Yes.
Yes. And you know, and that's the biggest challenge. And because a lot of times we in a room, you know, you get excited and you want to do this big horror scare, and it's like, well, we can't really do that because that doesn't apply to our rules, because somebody else can't see Rosemary, you know. So how do you do that, and how do you keep that, you know, how do you keep that fresh? And, you know, as one of my co-writer Jill said, you know, like a challenge with writing a second season of a show is, especially if it's about a haunted house, is the way the audience just doesn't go, move out of the house. What do you do? Like, it's so clearly haunted. Like, people in horror movies, you often get laughs by having them do really stupid things. And like, we've avoided that because this is like, you know, the characters are very, very, choice. Yeah, they have no choice. And I think that's what makes it scarier.
Well, thank you. And just to wrap this up, so what's the last show you've binged?
The last show I binged was, let's see, I'm watching Yellow Jackets now.
Oh my God, so good.
Yes, I really, really enjoy that. And again, it's like a good like twist on that, like on that format, which I really, really like that. And then before that, it was Ozark, and mixed in with Cheer season 2. I needed to come down off of my Ozark. Ozark was so intense that I needed to have like a little cheerleading in there in the mix. So
well, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Really great.
Originals, découvrez en avant-première nos interviews sur les séries qui font l'actu.